Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Delighted to welcome here amongst us today the Foreign Minister of Egypt, Ambassador Nabil Fahmy, who was a career Foreign Service officer, served in various posts for over a period of about 36 years, including two particularly important ambassadorships. He was, for a couple of years, the ambassador of his country to Japan, and then he was 9 years ambassador to the United States, which is, of course, a great indication of the confidence with which he was held in Cairo. He left the Foreign Service, was the dean of School of Public Service at the American University in Cairo, and then with the recent developments was called back to be the foreign minister of his country. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So perhaps we could I don't think you could be here at a more interesting time for the participants in this country, in this conference, and I think we'd be very interested in hearing your views on what's happening in Egypt at the moment. The focus of this conference has been youth empowerment. And since I think the issue of youth empowerment may have had something to do with the political turbulence in Egypt, perhaps you could begin by talking to us a little bit about the challenges and opportunities that confront Egyptian youth and how you see the prospects going forward.
I mean, when I was in Washington, John was my boss in many different capacities. So I was always flattered when he would take my phone calls or be available for breakfast or lunch. But to be fair to him, in spite of his high offices, he was accessible to diplomats like myself. So I just wanted to thank him publicly for that, because it's always useful when you can get to important people. Since I'm used to answering his questions, I actually will try to answer the question he put to us, to me. You know, I have to start by saying I am extremely proud of our youth. We didn't empower them, so they empowered themselves. That's exactly what happened. We didn't give them a role in the policy debate as young people, and definitely not in the political debate. And between our problems of governance, I mean our governance deficiencies, the youth bulge, 56% of Egypt, of our population, is younger than 25 years old. If you take it to 35, it's 65%. So more than half of our people are youth in one form or the other, one age group or the other, and definitely in comparison to me. Mm-hmm. So you can't ignore half of your people. Since we didn't respond to them, and I accept criticism on that, since we didn't respond to them early enough, they decided January 25th, 2011, we'll do it ourselves. And they literally went out on the street, they did not want to overthrow the president. They just wanted to ensure themselves a role in defining the future, specifically in changing the constitution and ensuring that the process thereafter would be a democratic electoral one. There was so much support from the old guys like me to the youth that they shifted their demands from change the constitution to change the whole government and then change the president and so on and so forth. That was 2 years ago. Let me also say that they did this having announced beforehand, 2 or 3 months beforehand, that they would do this on this specific date in this specific venue. So it's a really, really strange way to overthrow a government, that you actually tell it, I'm going to do it on that date and on that venue. And again, to be very candid with all of you, we started the process of rebuilding Egypt, establishing a different political system, and we messed it up again. Rather than putting together a constitution first, and then going into an electoral process. We jumped into the electoral process immediately, which divides you by definition. You're competing with each other. And we did that before we put together the Constitution. So we ended up electing a parliament and a president with no rules of the game, without defining who we were politically. What's happening in Egypt today is all about trying to define our political image in the 21st century. So anyway, a year and a half after the first revolution, we had elected a new president 3 months before he had finished his first term. The youth woke up again, and they said, 1 year in office, we will hold you accountable. We will have millions of signatures. You have failed because you're pursuing policies that are exclusive. And therefore, either you call for new elections or we will demonstrate. On June 30th, exactly on that date, they started to demonstrate, and they had over 20 million signatures. And again, the rest of the community went out to support the youth. I make this point not to take sides between the Islamists and the secularists. My side is known, that's not the issue. But I make this point because this is not about changing government. It's about changing society. And the youth are coming in, my son and his peers, they're as Egyptian as I am, but they're different kinds of Egyptians. I mean, I have to tell you the story. I have a grandson who's 5. Last year he came out at our beach house in the morning at 6 or 7, whatever it was. He woke up, I was reading the paper, and he goes by and he says, "What are you doing?" "I'm reading the paper." He's a 5-year-old, old school. You know, I'm a Middle Eastern. I'm not used to being told old school by my grandson. But I was surprised. I laughed, of course, and he ignored me and went to play with my dog. When his mother woke up, I said, "Your son just called me old school." And she said, what was he doing? "What were you doing?" "He was reading the paper." "We don't buy the paper. We read the paper on the internet. At night and in the morning, every hour. It's a different world for these kids. Half of our people are of a different world. This is all about them. We have to empower them now because they have empowered themselves politically. I need to give them the space for that political empowerment, and we will. But equally so, I need to give them the economic empowerment. And it is very difficult in Egypt to get a bank loan for a young entrepreneur who has nothing to mortgage. If you can mortgage something, fine. But you want to go up there and mortgage an idea. It's not yet in our culture. And these kids have a lot of good ideas, frankly. They're well educated, whether they are educated domestically or internationally. And I say this because where we don't do a good job in education, they pick it up in the internet. I'm talking about the smart kids. We have to do a better job in education for the average Egyptian. That definitely has to be done, particularly in the public schools. There is a problem there because the numbers vis-a-vis the capacities available and the assets and all that. But that's one thing. Frankly, to allow the youth to be able to translate their dreams into reality, we need to provide economic assets accessible to them, and we don't have that system. What we've been able to do is create what we call a social fund. Provides micro and small, medium-sized loans, but it's, again, not a market-oriented project. The second thing, which I mentioned first, is Egyptians want to determine who they are, so you need to give them political space. We're doing that. We have a huge number of parties, but in all honesty, we need for this to be done in a civilized fashion that is incrementally productive. We need to implement what we're calling the democratic roadmap, which is a 9-month roadmap started in July until next spring, when we finish the new constitution, have a referendum on that, have a public debate on the new constitution, and then hold elections for parliament and for president.
So if I could just interject on that point, on the political part, and then maybe we can go on to the economic prospects. Do you have a reasonably high level of confidence that this roadmap might work out better than the first one, where you said there was a false start? I take it, I'm sort of taking as implied in some of your comments, that you think it's going to work out better politically this time and move more on a path towards stability. How confident are you of that?
I'm sort of a strange mix myself, in that as a bureaucrat and academic, and then now I'm in politics. I honestly believe we have the order right. Mm-hmm. We had to do the Constitution first and then the election. So in that respect, it's right. And therefore, I'm much more optimistic now than before.
Good.
What concerns me is security. It also has to be inclusive. To be inclusive, it means bringing in people that you don't agree with. And if there's violence, you polarize the community. So are we on the right track? Yes. Will it be challenging? Yes. It still will be.